we got to look at one huge story in college football and what it means for the NFL, because Nico Iamaleava, the quarterback out of Tennessee, held out. And for anyone that didn't see this story, he was reportedly set to make $2.2 million playing for Tennessee this year as their quarterback. His camp wants $4 million, reportedly. Tennessee was not willing to give him that money. So all of this news started to get reported on social media. Nico's dad went to social media to harshly deny it. And then, whether it was because of the stress or the money or whatever, Nico holds out of the spring game at the last second for Tennessee. Tennessee comes out 24 hours later and announces that they are parting ways with the quarterback, and they're going to let him go find some other opportunity, and they're going to find a different starting quarterback. Staggering precedent out of this, because this is the first time we've seen a player in this situation hold out for more money. And we don't know, as we record today, I think it's important to set this, we don't know how the holdout's going to work, right? We don't know. I constantly tell people, Tennessee could turn around and only win 4 games this year. And if Nico suddenly signs somewhere to become the quarterback and wins a national championship, then we know who won. Also, Tennessee could win a national championship. Nico can end up a bench warmer on a school nobody knows, and it destroys his entire career moving forward. We have no idea who won, obviously. But there are long-term ramifications to this as the NFL continues to look around and figure out what to do with an NIL world that's coming in, Frank, to college, from college football to the NFL. We need to acknowledge that NIL has changed every single person that walks into the door in the NFL from the minute they get there.
Oh, absolutely. And I need 60 seconds to rant, because if you follow me at all on X, formerly Twitter,
on the clock,
you've heard this before from me. If you are blaming players for wanting to get paid, do yourself a favor and learn at least a little bit of history. Players were kept down, this whole student athlete thing, forever. Well, athletic directors, colleges chased every single cent. Every time I see Maryland playing UCLA on Big Ten Network, I'm reminded that college football is nothing but a business. Don't give me this amateurism stuff. And all of a sudden, the players wanted their piece of the pie. That's okay. Do not blame the players. I saw so much dumb hatred of Nico for wanting to get more money, trying to leverage. Now he swung and missed. But if you think that the problem with college sports is players trying to get money, you're dumb. You are just not very bright. Like, figure out that every one of these schools has ruined every fabric of college sports to try to chase every single penny they can in realignment. Every coach chases every bag there is. Jim Larinaga, basketball coach. He's like, how could my players possibly leave Miami for more money? They said they loved it here. Yeah, Jim, you said you loved George Mason. Then you went to Miami for more money. It wasn't because of the weather, okay? So NIL is totally fine. Colleges have made their bed. End of rant. Don't blame the players anymore. You're dumb if you do. Now, how this relates to the NFL, NIL's a good thing. Everybody's like, oh, NIL, they're so greedy. No NFL team's going to want this guy or that guy. Realize right now that NFL teams do not care in the slightest if college players get paid. They don't. They probably like it because they come into the NFL with a different mindset. We talked about this before we started taping. They're business people at this point. Shedeur Sanders is a business person already. He's already made enough money that you're not going to get to the league, get your first contract, and go crazy partying. Shedeur Sanders is already a millionaire. Like he's not going to do that. He's mature beyond his years, okay? So NFL teams don't care about that. They didn't care about the whole Cam Newton situation when he was allegedly getting money at Auburn. They didn't care about the Todd Gurley situation when he was signing autographs for money or whatever that was. They really don't care about any of this. In fact, it's a positive for the NFL that guys can transfer and make money and come into the NFL with a much different mindset than they came in with 10 years ago.
I think what's interesting is that we are seeing so many people, especially at the quarterback position, transfer. When I talk to coaches, general managers, et cetera, around the league, because we've got Cam Ward here who transferred, we got Shedeur Sanders. I mean, the likely top 2 quarterback prospects, and there are more in this draft, are going to be guys who transferred. And we saw this last year with Bo Nix, with Michael Penix, with Jaden Daniels. I mean, I can go on and Caleb Williams. And I know some of these guys had the same coaches and were following their coaches, but really, Drake May is like the outlier in that he didn't transfer. When I talk to people, I talked to Denver Broncos coach Sean Payton at NFL owners meetings a couple weeks ago, and I said, you scouted Bo Nix as a quarterback. How has the transfer process impacted your ability to scout guys? And with Bo in particular, he really liked that they got to see Bo in different offenses and has different passing responsibilities. And so they felt like they were more able to tailor an offense to Bo Nix when he got to Denver than they might have been otherwise if they hadn't seen it. Then you have Cam Ward, the likely first overall pick this year, who the Tennessee Titans are expected to pick. Well, Cam Ward, and more to come on this because I'm working on a story, but Cam Ward started at Incarnate Word in San Antonio and then goes to Washington State and then goes to Miami. And when I talk to coaches, they say, and scouts and evaluators, they say he would not be the first overall pick if he was still an Incarnate Word. I had one evaluator say if he was just as talented at Incarnate Word, they thought he'd be like 5th round tops, practice squad type of guy. And it was interesting because I met with Cam Ward's cousin, Quandre Diggs, who is DB in this league. He's played for the Lions. He's played for the Seattle Seahawks, most recently the Tennessee Titans, who, by the way, his cousin might go to. And Quandre told me that when Cam was considering coming out before going to Miami, he said, hey, look, I've got Drew Lock on my team, and no knock on Drew Lock, that rhymes, but you want to make sure that you have the experience by the time you get to the NFL level, because if you get drafted in your 3rd, 4th, 5th, a team's not going to be able to invest in you in the same way. They're not going to give you the same number of practice reps. And so even if the team in theory believes in you eventually, you're not going to have the actual reps, forget game reps, even practice reps with the ones and with the guys you'll be playing with. So if you go back one more year, you're going to be able to have that buy-in from an NFL team that you wouldn't have otherwise. So I actually think overwhelmingly the coaches, general managers, and scouts I talk to view the transfer portal as a positive. But what surprised me is when I reached out to someone in the scouting community today about Nico and I said, do you care? Does this matter? Do you even pay attention to this? And they said that they do kind of view it as a knock because they want a player to be most concerned on what is going to make them the best player rather than what's going to get them that extra million. And that if you're not trying to make yourself the best player, you got to question how much that guy loves football at the NFL level. What I will say is that that is the immediate reaction from someone in the scouting community. And it's a valid one. And it's something that will be discussed in these draft meetings when he declares. But if Nico thrives at his next stop, no one's going to care, and it's not going to impact his position because ultimately, this is what the NFL is doing too.
Let me ask you something, Jori, because you brought up something, and I had a question based off of it. You said Cam Ward wouldn't, and I agree. Cam Ward wouldn't have been a first-round pick if he stayed at Incarnate Word. Do you think that it's just a matter of Cam Ward wouldn't have been noticed on that stage that he was at Miami and Washington State, or by moving to Washington State and then Miami, he developed skills that allowed teams to say, we didn't, because different offenses like you talked about, or is it both? Like, is it, yeah, he wouldn't have gotten noticed at Incarnate Word, and you're always kind of skeptical about those guys anyway at the lower level, or is it playing with these different offenses allowed him to blossom as a quarterback where you go, we wouldn't have seen that if he stayed at Incarnate Word for 5 years because he would have just probably been in the same offense the whole time.
Yeah, 2 elements here. And we'll start with what happens when you go to a new place. And the person from the scouting community I talked to today said, quote, now he has to go to a new system, environment, and earn trust and respect of a completely different program. That decision is going to follow him, and people are going to be hard on him because of it. So there's this point of you are making it harder for yourself because you have to constantly adapt. NFL scouts and coaches and general managers love that Cam Ward succeeded everywhere he went. I'm not saying everything was perfect, and obviously, like every player, he's not a finished product coming to the NFL, but they said, we know even if you have a new OC next year, he's already adapted to different systems. Jalen Hurts was a lot like this. Even if you have a different receiver, you don't have the same weapons around him, or let's say he goes to Tennessee and Tony Pollard's not there forever. Well, he has adapted at each place and showed that he can thrive and he can build the relationships and also understand the playbook at different places. So there's that element of the adaptability. I mean, even think back to Baker Mayfield. Baker had kind of shown that at the college level, and now they're like, he was going to the Browns, and they didn't know if they were going to have the same coaching staff forever. And so I do think that teams consider if you have 2 quarterbacks who you think have similar ability, but one of them has shown the adaptability, the other one might be adaptable, but they haven't proved it over the course of a season. That actually is a big win for coaches and teams evaluating them. The other element here is Los Angeles Rams general manager Les Snead has told me multiple times this video game metaphor that I've talked about on this podcast, and that is that when you go from the college to the pro level, it's like you're going to the next level of video game. And teams are trying to project, hey, based off how you performed at this level of the video game, how are you going to project at the next level? And particularly at quarterback, it's one of the hardest projections because this is not just about what you're physically able to do. You have to diagnose the whole field. And I understand that every position has some degree of mental element, and I'm not trying to downplay that, but I think we can all agree that the quarterback has a unique set of responsibilities in terms of the mental processing and reading the whole picture. Well, Incarnate Word is like 3 levels of the video game from what the NFL is. Washington State gets you closer and Miami gets you closer. And so the reason that they like it is because now there's still some projection, but there's less of a projection. So now you have two things going for a guy like Cam Ward. And I'm not trying to make out Cam Ward as guaranteed NFL star Hall of Famer. Hope that for him, hope that for everybody. But the point is that, one, he's proven adaptable and the ability to win with different casts, different coaching staffs, and different playbooks. And two, at each level, as you increased in the video game, he continued to succeed. And so you can say, based off the fact that he succeeded from 1 to 2 to 3, we feel good about what he's going to do at 4.
I just think that it's not, there's no coincidence that, like, going into last year, if you go back a year from now, or, 11 months or whatever after the draft, I said, like, look, the odds of all 6 of these quarterbacks hitting are pretty low. We've never seen that before. And then kind of all of them did, except J.J. McCarthy, who didn't play, but he looked good in the preseason. You're like, well, what's changed? And honestly, the answer, I don't think it's a coincidence that we're in the NIL era now, because guys stay in college longer. They get reps. And we've seen a direct correlation with most guys who come out early from college at quarterback don't succeed. It's because they just didn't have enough reps. But a guy like Jaden Daniels, you think about him instantly. If he would have come straight to the NFL after he had a good season, second to last season in college, he might not have been the same guy. He stayed another year because he had the NIL money. If I'm a young guy, if I'm 22 years old and I'm like, I could jump to the NFL now and make some money, or I could play for free for another season, I'm jumping to the NFL. Well, now it's like, well, I don't need to jump to the NFL. Yeah, I'd make more money incrementally there, but maybe not off a 4th, 5th round deal, but I'm going to make some money right now, get to play some more. That's great for NFL teams. They get an extra year of experience, an extra year of evaluation out of these guys. There is no coincidence that last year's quarterback class hit at a higher rate than pretty much any other class that we've seen.
There are moments, guys, where it's like you think about what we've seen on the quarterbacks, particularly drafted, that haven't worked out. And some of the biggest busts that we've had, whether it's Jamarcus Russell or let's call Zach Wilson a more recent bust, right? Like in some ways, I think what we have to acknowledge is that so often a bust comes from, I had 1 or 2 games or a handful of games in one season that was really good.
Anthony
then it got
Richardson.
to the league and all of a sudden I got a bunch of money and we don't know how kids are going to adapt to now suddenly having a bunch of money and being, living as adults instead of living as college kids. Like some of these variables change the longer people stay in school. And C-Rob, our very own Charles Robinson, pointed out there are people around the league that are excited that Nico's going to go to an offense that isn't a gimmicky offense like Tennessee's is, where the wideouts don't line up sort of awkwardly in a way that creates these mismatches. And you can watch quarterback. Like, look right now, we're sitting here saying that Jackson Dart may or may not be a great quarterback because we haven't seen him have to go through a whole progression of reads. Like, the more tape you get on a kid, the more likely you are to evaluate him, but also the more that you understand who they're going to be. So I do think that there's a level of, okay, could Nico's family and Nico handled some of this situation differently? Maybe. They're going to learn through that, I would think. But also, you get the opportunity to get through that process in college when they get to the pros. I just think it's such a variable. I remember talking to one prospect when he was drafted, and he was drafted by the Vikings a few years ago. And I asked him if he was excited, and he told me, he's like, man, I don't even know where Minnesota is on a map. And like, that's real for these kids that are drafted. So you think about what it's like to suddenly like, I don't know where Minnesota is on a map. I now live there. I now have to figure out like where I'm going to live, how I'm going to live. I get paid and I don't even know what to do with that money or how to manage. Like, these are all the variables that happen in the same summer where your entire life is expected that you're now going to become a rookie phenom. Like, that's where I think NIL in the college game is a beautiful thing long-term for the NFL, because these kids come in better prepared to handle all of the variables, all the noise that's outside of just stepping on a field. They're prepared to handle. And if this process helps that, I think it's a great thing for the league, Jori.
Right. The reality is that the MLB has minor leagues. The NBA has G leagues. We see so many different developmental leagues that can help bridge the gap from college to the pro. The NFL does not have that, and the other pro football leagues that are there for a little bit in the spring are not comparable. And so the more ability you can be fully developed when you get to the pro level, both so you understand what you're doing and so a team is willing to invest in you and create the infrastructure around you, the better. Because also, if you're getting drafted highly, you're probably not coming to a team that is totally ready to win. And so you're going to have to overcome it. But I think that the San Francisco 49ers are one of the best examples of, hey, Brock Purdy didn't have extra worldly, or is that a world? He didn't have this out of the...
It is in my world.
We're going to make it. Don't cut that out. That was great.
Don't ask Frank and I if it's a word. We're like, we can put
know.
L-Y
I'm supposed
at
to
the
be
end
the
of
vocab
anything.
queen, right?
Make us into anything, yeah.
Brock Purdy did not have excellent, and he was not being drafted because his athletic skills were just out of this world from an NFL level. Obviously, I'm not trying to compare myself athletically to him. I can't even run without fracturing my foot. That's another story. But I think that when you look at Brock Purdy, you say, well, he is good physically from what the NFL wants, but not great. Trey Lance had this X factor of all of his mobility that Kyle Shanahan was super excited about, but one of them started for 4 years. The other barely started in high school or college. And look where they each are now. Trey Lance is on his third team in like 5 years. He's barely started. The Cowboys didn't even try and bring him back as their backup. The Chargers are signing him, but who thinks he's really going to beat out Justin Herbert anytime soon? I sure don't. And then Brock Purdy should be up for this big old contract. And I think a lot of this is because Brock Purdy came in with that experience. And again, credit to Brock Purdy and credit to what he has done and the way that he has exceeded expectations going from Mr. Irrelevant to the starting quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers. But it's just a constant reminder that whether you are the guy or not, you are going to be better off. I mean, again, even Trevor Lawrence, he's still got these gifts, but he hasn't made a deep playoff run. And I think that part of that is because just keep going and going and going. You are not going to, no matter how good you are not guaranteed to come into the NFL and have all of these things out of your control work in your favor. So the more experience you have, the better.
And one real quick, a couple quick points on this whole topic. One reason I like Shedeur Sanders, and I think he's going to be a good NFL quarterback, is I've seen him lift 2 programs now. It's one thing to go to a program like a Jackson State where he started. He had great success there. Okay, now you're trying a different challenge with Colorado completely. I'm based in Colorado. I know how dead that program was for 20, 30 years. He came in and he lifted that program. So I'm like, oh, you've done it 2 different places. That's interesting to me. You did an entirely different environment and you succeeded there. That's a plus. And I think it would have to be for NFL teams. And also, we've talked a lot about different environments as far as offensive coaches and offensive schemes. I just think there's life reps involved in, hey, I started at Incarnate Word. I went to Washington State, which is not like the media capital of the world when it comes to interest in Pullman, Washington. And then I went to Miami, which is kind of like people care about Miami football, right? You've now experienced different environments, different places to live. Like you talked about, Fitz, with I don't even know where Minnesota is on a map. If you think about how college football was 10 years ago, before this madness with the transfer portal and all that, guys were stars in high school. They went to one college. They stayed there pretty insulated for 4 years. And then they went to a completely different environment where maybe you went to not exactly a hotbed of media or anything or attention in college, but you played really well there and you became a first-round pick of the New York Giants. And now you're dealing with New York for the first time in your life and the New York media, whereas these kids now have been to 2-3 different colleges, Bo Nix or whoever, Jaden Daniels, where you've dealt with the crazy LSU fans that you've never dealt with at Arizona State. Sorry, Evan Doherty, you guys are great too. And I think that just helps you. Jaden Daniels goes to Washington, and all of a sudden he's not overwhelmed by everything. He's like, okay, I've been in different life environments. I just think there's some value to that too.
Over 3/4 of the states in the United States have allowed and decided legally to offer high school kids to profit on their name, image, likeness. So I will remind everybody that whatever we're talking about right now, from the trickle down to college, there are kids, and I was lucky enough to be at Rivals 5-star camp last year and talking, to the people around one of the highest recruited quarterbacks in the country. That kid was already worth over $1 million, right? So I just want to remind everybody that this is not ending. It's only growing. So the NFL, college football, high school football, eventually middle school football, everybody's going to have to figure this out. And it's just my soapbox moment for people that say it's all broken and it's all going to hell. It's not. It's going straight towards the inevitability of unionization of college athletes, collective bargaining, and the system where the schools that choose to spend the money in college football are going to have a salary cap floor and a salary cap ceiling, just like the NFL, and there will be opportunities. I have to scream loudly. Look, Nico had every right to come in and try and get more money, right? We have no idea what his pro career is going to look like. Dillon Gabriel made over $6 million in his college career playing quarterback, ending at the University of Oregon. Dillon Gabriel is not expected to be much of anything at the NFL level. So he got the most out of the most that he could get. I respect him. Tennessee had the right to say, no, we're not going to pay it. Like everybody in this process, was well within their rights to do what they want to do. But for people that think the system is broken and college football is going to die, no, it's not. It's going to evolve. And just like there was a time when there wasn't collective bargaining unions for the NFL, that's the time we've just lived in college football. It's all going to change. I just think that the more we do this, the better the pros are eventually going to be, because we are getting pros that are ready to be pros from day one, Jori.
Right. The college league hasn't been truly amateur for a long time now. And so we're just being a little more honest about that. And if you want to say that, oh, this is unfair to schools, well, they're hiring general managers and assistant general managers, which, by the way, Max Crosby, now an assistant general manager of Eastern Carolina football while playing for the Las Vegas Raiders. But I think that everyone is realistic that this is pro. What I want to ask is, though, is Tennessee better or worse off? Because you can say Tennessee had the right not to pay him, and I don't have a great sense of what their next quarterback is going to look like, but I think a lot of this is, it's less about the player and more about the precedent and more about the boosters being like, we don't want this to just be, like Dallas Cowboys, Philadelphia Eagles. We often talk about the difference in their front offices. Howie Roseman of the Philadelphia Eagles routinely gets deals done early, and so because of that, it seems like he saves money. Now, sometimes you end up paying a guy you wish you maybe didn't pay. That's another story. But all of these deals get done early because that is just what the Philadelphia Eagles have always done. Dallas Cowboys, on the other hand, as we've talked about at length, DeMarcus Lawrence is like, I'm not getting shoulder surgery until you give me my new contract, so you better give it to me. And he puts that on that. Ezekiel Elliott, CeeDee Lamb holding out for all of training camp. And there's not a lot of incentive now for a guy like Micah Parsons to get a deal done early because he knows that everyone else waits, and then Jerry pays up at the end. So my question is, Tennessee is trying to have this precedent of, we're not just going to pay you because you want, but I don't know that this is going to work in the same way that the Philadelphia Eagles precedent works, because not only does this affect other people, but if you're trying to recruit guys and you're saying, no, we're actually not willing to pay you, and if you ask us, we're not going to give you your rights, like, it's kind of unclear to me because so much has changed in the college landscape, what this will do for Tennessee's ability to recruit and retain players.
I mean, we're going to get quick answers on that. Right now, their backup quarterback is a true freshman, so that's not ideal. They've made it clear they're going to go to the transfer portal and try and find somebody, but they did land a 2026 high recruit, a top 10 recruit quarterback. So let's see if he sticks around, knowing that they already have him. Two interesting things. The SEC, by rule, doesn't allow quarterbacks or players to transfer to other SEC schools in the late transfer portal window. So the window that's about to open up, they can't look for another SEC quarterback, and Nico can't look to be the quarterback of another SEC school. That's a complication. And then the second part of this is just the timing. Like, they're late. They're going to be bringing in a quarterback late. We talk about learning offenses. Like, somebody's going to get paid to be the Tennessee quarterback this year. And I got to imagine it's somebody that has enough college football experience to quickly assimilate it. That, Jori, goes back to the point I made earlier. Like, if Tennessee wins 10, 11 games, goes to the college football playoff, then yeah, they were brilliant. If the wheels come off of this thing and they win 5 games and Josh Heupel's getting fired because they didn't have a quarterback, that we're going to get the answer to it, as painful as it might be one way or the other.
And you know what's going to happen? You know, if Nico goes to another school, he goes to, I don't know, Illinois or whatever, and balls out, all of a sudden NFL teams are going to say, maybe it's just Tennessee wasn't the right fit. They're going to look at him completely differently. This is what the transfer portal does, and that's why it can be beneficial to players, because sometimes a new start is just what's needed, however you got there.